Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we'll be looking at creating a multi-statement valued function in MS SQL. Now in the inline table statement function, we run one query, return the result set as a table. However, in the multi-statement table valued function, we will actually have the leverage of defining our own table construct and the flexibility to execute more than one queries to fill this table construct before we finally return it. Now to create one of these functions, we just need to go back to our table valued functions folder, right click, and then we would see new multi-statement table valued function. That will bring up this template, which we'll be using to guide our development. So in the template, we start off with our create function statement, and then we give the function a name. So I'm going to say all persons, and all persons meaning we're going to be writing some statements that will return all the persons currently in our school DB, and persons would be students and teachers. Now, in order to differentiate between the two, I will have to put some form of flag. And so given that I don't need any parameters to know all of the persons, so I'm actually just going to not use parameters. And if you want to see how parameters work, you can look in the scalar valued functions video or the table valued functions video, and then you get a clear sense of why we need parameters and why we may not need parameters. However, pressing forward in finding all persons inside the school DB, we don't need any parameters, so we'll go on, and then we see that the returns type is of type table, but then remember we're replacing everything inside of the angle brackets. So inside of the angle brackets here, we would actually say @ and give a name for the table that is going to be returned. So our table or variable of type table that will be returned will be persons. Now the data that I want back on the persons will be their first name, their last name, the date they joined the school, as well as a flag to say if they are staff or teacher. So in defining my table, I can actually define all the columns just like I would in creating a table it to go into the SQL structure, except in this situation my table is a variable. However, once again the rules apply nonetheless. So if I go by the angle brackets, I'm going to define column 1 and then give it a data type, and then since I'll have multiple columns, I use a comma until I get to the last column. So the first column I'll have here is first name, and the data type for first name that I'll be entertaining will be nvarchar 50. And then I have my comma, and then the next one would be last name, and this one will also be nvarchar 50. Now I did say that I wanted to find the date they joined as well as if they are student or staff. So the next one would be date joined, and date joined I would probably give date time, and then the last one would be personnel type. All right, so the fact is, once again, I'm defining my own columns in my own table called @persons. So this is just one big variable of type table that will look like a table, operate like a table, and be returned from this statement as a table. So I'm just putting in personal type as the final one, and I'll leave this as nvarchar 50 because we're going to use this one to print the word staff or student based on the person's status. Now the next instruction in this template is to fill the table variable with the rows for your result set. So what I'm going to do is insert into this table twice. I'm going to insert into this table all of the students, and I'm going to hard code the value student so that personnel type will always be student for all of the students. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the teachers table, but hard coding the word teacher as the personnel type flag. So I can write insert into, And we all know the insert into, we write insert into, and then the table we're inserting into. In this case, our table is in the form of a variable of type table. So our table, or temp table, or variable table is at sign persons. And then what we want to do is a select statement. So I can actually just chain an insert into statement onto a select statement, so that whatever this select statement returns just goes straight into the table. So I don't have to define all the columns and then say values and then try and find the values that match back. If I have the result set, that I can just hard code and, well, dynamically fill the table based on what is coming back. All right. So in this case, I'm just going to say select, and then from the students table, and I'm just going to expand the students table just to refresh myself. I have first name, so I can actually just drag and drop from the Object Explorer. So I have first name, comma, last name. And note, if you're doing it this way, where you're not specifying the columns, you have to make sure that whatever you're selecting in this statement matches to the column structure of the table you're inserting into using this method. So we defined it as first name, last name, date, joined, and personal type. So I'm inserting into persons, and then I'm selecting the first name to match to the first name, the last name to match to the last name, and then date joined would be contextually the same as enrollment date. And then after that, I'm going to hard code the value of student. All right. So once again, I'm selecting from some table. I haven't defined the table as yet, but it's a select statement, so it's coming from a table, right? So I'm selecting this value from the table, that value from the table, that value from the table, but I'm also allowed to select a hard-coded value if I wanted to, and this hard-coded value will correspond with personnel type. And then after defining all of the values or columns that I want to select, of course, we know we have to finish up by saying from, and then students. And then all the red lines go away because now it says, okay, now I know what this guy is talking about. So I'm selecting first name, last name, enrollment date, all from students, and I'm also just hard coding. So I'm kind of cheating by just hard coding the word student into this data set coming from the students table and inserting that into person. So let me just run this section just to show you what it would look like. So the select first name, last name, enrollment date, I'm just going to execute that. And then you see here that it's bringing back all of the students in the database with their enrollment dates, but everybody has the word student hard coded no matter what. All right. So when it goes into the persons table, all of the students in the database will have that as their personal type value. Now, simply enough, I'm just going to repeat this entire statement for the teachers table, because I did say I wanted to know all the persons in the school, and all the persons in the school would be either teacher or student. So instead of trying to write any complex query and join and trying to figure out which is which, I can just say, if I know I'm selecting from the students table, then that's going to be a student. So I'm going to select again from the teachers table, and I'm changing the flag this time to teacher, and I'm selecting the same data from the teachers table. And I can just expand the teachers table just to make sure that I'm getting my column names correctly. And you see here, I'm referencing enrollment date, which is wrong. The date, it's date joined according to the teachers table. So I need to rectify that. And I'm just going to drag it over since I already have it, and then fix my comma. And there we go. So first name, last name, and date joined coming from the teachers table, and we're hard coding personnel type. So that means anytime this function is run, it will define this table called persons with these 4 columns, and then proceed to execute these queries, which are filling the persons table with data. And then at the end of it all, it just returns. So when it returns, it would return whatever values went into persons. Now to complete this is the creation query. Once again, we need to execute. So it will actually create the table, and I'm getting an error here where it's saying that I have some mismatches with the number of columns supplied somewhere. I see the error. So I didn't put the comma after date joined. So let me try that again and execute, and there we go. Commands completed successfully. And then once again, to validate, I can just go to table valid functions and refresh. And when I expand, I will see grade range listed there. So we're going to try and run a query to see what comes back from this function. And remember, with table valid functions, we have to select from the function like it was a table. So I'm just going to select star from and just say DBO grade range. Notice we didn't put in any parameters. Remember, we didn't put any parameters when we were creating a function. So there is no need to pass in a value into grade range. And then when I execute that, I see, oh, I'm sorry, I still need to make representation of the fact that it's a function, right? So even though there are no values going in, I still need to open and close braces to show that it's a function. And when I execute, it will take a while. I'm sorry, I was executing the wrong function. I should be looking at all persons, not grade range. Apologies. So we're looking at all persons. So I'm selecting star from all persons, and we still need to make representation for the braces, even though we are not passing in any parameters. And when I execute, then we see here all of the persons coming back in the database. So at this point, we don't know which table anything is coming from. The only way we know which table or can deduce which table what came from is the fact that we put that personnel type flag on our data set. So without that, we could have joined that data seamlessly, and it would all be kind of hidden from naked eye as to how we got the students and teachers to come back as one big data set. So that's how multi-line or multi-statement table valued functions work. You just create them, define your table, define your query, fill the table with the result set, and return. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed this one.